Welcome to the first CEOS Analysis Ready Data webinar. I'm Zoltán Szántoi, co-chair of the Land Surface Imaging Virtual Constellation within CEOS on behalf of the European Commission. I will say a little more about CEOS in a minute, but before that, let me start with a brief introduction. What is this webinar about? Thank you. So the objectives of this introductory webinar are to establish dialogue between CEOS and the broader geospatial community on the topic of ARD, and further to introduce the CEOS ARD for land framework and CEOS ARD strategy. We will have subsequent webinars where we will look into more details and aspects of ARD and future data architectures, but for today, we will be rather general and prioritize on questions and answers. Thank you. A little bit of an overview. First of all, I would like to welcome everyone, not only by the presenters today, but by the entire LSI VC and CEOS. Today, we will have 4 short presentations, a CEOS introduction, as promised earlier, setting the stage, why CEOS ARD by Adam Lewis from Geoscience Australia, the CEOS Analysis Ready Data for Land Framework and Status by Andrea Sicuera, also from Geoscience Australia, and the implication for the community by Steve Laban from United States Geological Survey. After these, we will have about 40 minutes for questions and answers. Thank you. Now, a little more about how the questions and answers session will work. I think you already received an email from Matt, but if you missed it, please go to the below web address, https://www.slide.do, enter the event code, CEOS ARD. This can be capital or small case, I think it doesn't matter. The best if you join it with your full name and organization, as in that way we will know who they are when answering the questions in real time after the presentations. In the 40-minute session, we will, if we will not be able to cover all the questions, then we will follow up through emails. Also, please keep in mind that your questions will help us to shape the next webinar. So please go ahead and send questions during the talk or after the talks. Thanks. Now, as promised, few words about the Committee on Earth Observation Satellites now. So CEOS was established under the aegis of the G7 summit back in 1984. The main function of CEOS is to coordinate and harmonize Earth observation to help the user community to access and use such data, but also helps, for example, in calibration and validation activities among its agencies. Just to see some numbers about CEOS, there are over 60 member agencies from 34 countries with about 180 active missions. And these missions are generally using over 660 instruments. As one can imagine, the coordination among all these organizations is not simple. Thus, there are 5 working groups and 7 virtual constellations to support this work, from where the land surface imaging is one of the virtual constellations. To move towards CART4L, CEOS identified the need for a harmonization process to have a maximum impact of the data its agencies provide. So based on this recognition, the LSI VC started to work on the CART4L topic, which Adam will talk about in the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Zolty, and hi, everybody. It's great to have such interest in this webinar. My name's Adam Lewis. I'm from Geoscience Australia, although I work on the Digital Earth Africa establishment team. I'm one of the co-leads of CEOS's land surface imaging team. I also, for now, co-chair the CEOS strategic implementation team. My task here in the next couple of slides is to give you the rationale that led CEOS to begin work on analysis-ready data for land. Thanks, Steve. This slide, there are 2 points I want to make about this slide. One is we needed to define the term ARD because as such, it can be anything to anybody. So in CEOS, we defined ARD in 2016, and we defined it using the following words: that CEOS ARD are satellite data that have been processed to a minimum set of requirements and organized into a form that allows more or less immediate analysis with a minimum of additional user effort and interoperability both through time and with other data sets. The work in CEOS was initially led by the Land Surface Imaging team, as Zolta has said, or LSI. And I want to emphasize that that includes members from over 12 space agencies and over a period of several years. And more than that, a much wider community of experts in remote sensing, including in passive reflection, passive thermal, radar, and more recently space LiDAR, have been involved in groups working on the technical detail. Now's the, I'll leave that. Next slide, please, Steve. So there were 3 drivers for analysis ready data, 3 reasons why we thought this is a really important thing to pursue, and they're all interconnected. The first one was big data, and the exponential increase in data flow that we are seeing now means that it's inefficient to be repeating any unnecessary processing, including pre-processing. And it's also impossible to process even a fraction of the data in bespoke ways, which is what we used to do. So specialized pre-processing is becoming a thing of the past. More than ever before, we think that users need to be able to engage with data, not with the pre-processing of data. The second reason is that the science had advanced pretty rapidly to being focused largely on time series analysis. And scientifically, we now know how much information lies in the time series of observations. But to use a time series, you have to be able to compare the data through time. You have to know that if a data value changes, that change is likely to be due to a change on the ground or in the water, not to the vagary of a way in which the data have been processed. And the third reason is that systems need to be operational. And the new capabilities in land observation mean that these can become operational. We have the density of observations and the surety. But to be operational, you have to also be able to plan beyond one sensor. The data from different sensors of the same family or general type will have to be interleaved or cross-calibrated or used to produce the one product that will endure through time. Next slide, please, Steve. So the broad solution to those problems is to move land surface imaging from being top of the atmosphere to being land surface, and to move from image analysis, which is essentially an empirical search for patterns in an image, to regarding each pixel as a measurement of the land surface. And that measurement should then be quality assured and corrected for known and controllable sources of error. And that's really the journey we're on now. Progress is really good. The teams working on this have identified a number of such measurements, including the 4 mentioned on this slide, and specifications have been developed and data are starting to be produced according to those specifications. We haven't excelled and perhaps have lagged in terms of engaging with an audience beyond CEOS, especially the commercial sector. And it's really exciting to have such interest in this webinar because that's what we're trying to do here. The next speaker, Andrea, will go through the CEOS framework itself in a bit more detail. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Adam, and welcome everyone. My name is Andrea Siqueira from Geoscience Australia, and I will be presenting today an overview on the CEOS ARD framework, the CEOS ARD strategy, and the roadmap. And to finalize, I will show some CEOS ARD product examples. Thank you, Steve. So the CEOS Analysis Ready Data Framework has 3 elements. The definition, which Adam already talked about in his presentation. The product family specifications, which are technical documents and provide details on what type of corrections the data providers need to do in order to deliver analysis-ready data to their user community. Initially, 3 PFSs were created and endorsed: the surface reflectance, surface temperature, and the normalized radar backscatter. And more recently, a new PFS for polarimetric radar was endorsed by the LSI-VC community. There are also other PFSs under development, which are mainly driven by user needs. And the last part of the framework is the product alignment assessment process, which has 2 steps to it. The first one is the self-assessment process, which is a process where data providers self-assess their products using the specifications to understand how well their products meet the CEOS ARD specifications, and the peer review process, which is an independent assessment to confirm the CEOS ARD product level, and if it's a threshold level or a target level. Once the product alignment assessment process is completed and the CEOS ARD product level is confirmed, if it's a threshold or a target level, the CARD dataset is cataloged for promotion and easy of access for users. Thank you, Steve. So as part of the broader vision that CEOS has for analysis-ready data, the CEOS ARD strategy was created last year. The strategy reflects the work that the LSI-VC team has been doing on the CARD4L initiative. And it also acknowledges the need to expand the work in CEOS beyond the product family specifications and also beyond the land domain. The ARD strategy for CEOS is based around 4 pillars. The first pillar of this strategy is the CEOS ARD user needs and specifications. The development of ARD specifications is central to the CEOS ARD work. And in order for this initiative to succeed, any future development of ARD specifications must consider user needs. Assured production and access of ARD products is the second pillar of this strategy. It's critical to make sure that data discovery, data access, and data integration is a priority, so users can make the most of the CEOS ARD standards. Pilots and feedback is the third pillar for the strategy. And the strategy proposes several pilots and tasks, but one of the main objectives of this pillar is to collect lessons learned to be used to improve the ARD specifications and delivery methods of platforms such as ODC and Digital Earth Africa. And the last pillar of the strategy is communication and promotion, which CEOS has been doing through different channels, including this webinar. So for more details on the CEOS ARD strategy, you can go to the CEOS ARD webpage, and you can see the webpage in my slide. Thank you, Steve. So having in mind the CEOS ARD strategy, we developed a one-year roadmap, which is based around the 4 pillars of the strategy. The 2020 roadmap covers activities related to the ARD specifications and user needs, including the development of new product family specifications, and of course, the annual review cycle of the previous specifications. The development of new specifications, such as the polarimetric radar and the newly planned aquatic reflectance PFS, are based on established user needs and priorities. The roadmap addresses the third component of the CEOS ARD framework, agency self-assessment and the peer review process. USGS and the European Space Agency carried out their formal self-assessment for their optical products, and these self-assessments are currently being peer-reviewed. The roadmap considers the commercial engagement in the CEOS ARD initiative and how the commercial sector may play different roles as data users, data providers, data hosts, or as providers of processing chains to produce data that meet CEOS ARD specifications, We have already had several discussions with industry to understand their views. A paper has been produced looking at how CEOs needs to engage efficiently with the private sector to take the CEOs ARD to the next level. The views and input from the private sector and, on how LSIVC and CEOs should approach the broader community and the commercial sector are crucial for the success of the CEOs Analysis Ready Data initiative. The roadmap includes the development of the CEOs Interoperability Terminology Report, which intends to consistently discuss and provide examples of key terms such as ARD, CAD4L, harmonized products, and so on. And also the roadmap envisages to establish pipelines and procedures for CEOs ARD by piloting CEOs ARD products. It's expected that Digital Earth Africa will provide the opportunity to trial a CEOs ARD product on a large scale, and Synergize has been working with Digital Earth Africa towards the production of a radar ARD product. The roadmap also covers the promotion side. For the last 3 years or so, CEOs has been promoting the work on CEOs ARD through different channels, including publishing materials on the CEOs ARD webpage, running sessions, presenting and participating at multiple conferences, as well as publishing papers in conferences and conference proceedings. All these efforts have been successful and served as the motivation for us to organize this webinar today. Thanks. And my last slide is on the CAD4L examples. USGS collection tool, Landsat 8 Level 2 surface reflectors, is an example of CEOs Analysis Ready Data. USGS, as I mentioned before, has already gone through the formal self-assessment, and the expectation is that results from the peer review will be made available very soon in the CEOs ARD webpage. We can see the same situation with the Level 2 2A surface reflectors product from the European Space Agency, Sentinel-2. Results from the peer review process will also be made available very soon to the user community. And finally, the expectation is that JAXA ALUS-2 and PULSAR-2 polarimetric decomposition and normalized radar-based scatter products will be also CEOs ARD compliant datasets. JAXA is planning to undertake the formal self-assessment very soon. And with that, I finalize my talk. Many thanks for your attention, and I would like to invite our next speaker, Steve Laban.
Thank you, Andrea, and welcome everyone. Again, my name is Steve Laban. I'm with the U.S. Geological Survey and also one of the CEOS LSIVC co-chairs, along with my dear friends and colleagues, Zolti and Adam. Adoption of the CEOS ARD and the CAD4L framework, which Andrea just mentioned, has several key advantages for 3 broad groups, which we have defined as follows. First, data producers. These are the people who actually generate the products. Data distributors are the second group. These are the people who provide these products to the end users. And then finally, number 3 are the data users. These are the people who actually are using the products. These groups are not intended to be viewed as individual silos, and you may identify with being part of more than one of these groups. So first of all, from a data producer's perspective, from an increased uptake perspective, data analysis, statistics, and machine learning all are being made easier through the availability of free and open programming modules and tools. And data producers must also take steps to ease this availability of data for a consistent and predictable framework to be able to do that. On the increased impact, new and emerging users of satellite data benefit greatly from assistance with pre-processing and data preparation. Making data easier to access and use will increase its impact and accelerate the growth of this user base. From a relevance perspective, if data are not available for use straight away, it may be left behind. For continued relevance, data should be easy to use, easy to access, and fit seamlessly into workflows and future data architectures. CEOS ARD can contribute to optimizing the use of viable resources as well. For example, instead of having highly skilled scientists doing basic pre-processing work, they can better focus their efforts on performing good science. And finally, CEOS ARD enables interoperability. It's a starting point for this with data and information from other data producers. The integration and combination of consistent and comparable data provides new avenues for analysis, greatly increasing information density. Next, from a data distributor's perspective, CEOS ARD can provide a broad range of analysis-ready data products that are ready to use and that can all be hosted within the same environment, let's say a cloud environment, making that platform very appealing to customers. Consistent and high-quality data sets are available using CEOS ARD framework, which makes life easier for users and greatly increases the amount of analytics that can be performed. The integration and combination of CEOS ARD provides these new avenues for analysis. Now, finally, from a data user's perspective, even sophisticated users of Earth observation data typically invest a large portion of their effort into data preparation, sometimes even up to 80%. This is a major barrier to full and successful utilization of space-based data. As data volumes grow, this barrier is becoming more significant for all users. Data producers invest significant amounts of time and effort making sure data is as good as it can be. So as an end user, you can capitalize on this knowledge and expertise for your applications, ensuring quality and accuracy by using CEOS ARD datasets. CEOS ARD also minimizes costs. Data processing can be costly, and pre-processed datasets reduce these costs. Again, the integration combination of consistent and comparable data provides new avenues for analysis and greatly increases information density for applications such as time series analysis, which Adam talked about earlier. Again, all of this information and more can be found on our CEOS ARD website, http://ceos.org/ARD. And with that, we'd like to be able to answer as many questions as possible in the time remaining. Again, questions can be submitted via Slido. The information is there on your screen, www.sli.do. The event code is CEOS ARD, again, not case sensitive. And should there be any questions we cannot address in this allotted time, we will plan to follow up with you via email. And again, as Zolti mentioned, your questions and feedback will help shape future CEOS ARD webinars within the next couple of months. So with that, we will take questions, and we'll have Matt, the lead of our secretariat, help us with that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Steve. Yes, so we've had some good questions come through. The first one here is from Arnold Holland from PCI Geomatics. And the question is the session today being recorded? And I can answer that one. Yes, it is. It will be available at this same link that you used to access the live stream. It'll be archived there. Secondly, Ignacio Borlaf asked, is there a product family specification for interferometric radar? Perhaps Andrea, direct that one to you.
Yes, thanks, Matt. Yes, there is. And there is a SAR subgroup working on that currently.
Great. And I'll just add, I saw that the lead of that SAR subgroup, OK Rosenquist, wrote back in the Slido that the PFS is under development, and the plan is to endorse it in the first quarter of 2021. Okay. The next question is from Yvonne Petiteville from ESA. The question is, do we have the names and affiliations of everybody on the webinar today? Yes, everybody registered, so we have a pretty comprehensive list. And we'll be using that list to contact everybody and send the link for this recording and a little bit of a transcript as well. M. Abdullah from Not Specified asks, how is your work related to the geo essential variables work? Adam, would you be able to answer that one?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I can do that. I just know there's a number of questions coming in that are getting shuffled up the order, Matt, as people vote for them. But in terms of the essential variables, the analysis ready data is a pre-step. So it's getting the satellite data to the point where they can be used broadly and would then be used to derive essential variables, so that your supply chain from satellite to essential variable is robust and has that analysis ready data step in it. I'd note that we're also working with groups like GeoGlam, who are evolving things like agricultural essential variables, or and that's a similar case where the critical variables they're looking for would be derived from analysis ready data.
Thanks, Adam. The next question is from Siri Jodha Khalsa, and it is, how does the community at large become involved in defining or reviewing the ARD product family specifications? Andrea?
We are trying to involve more and more the community. For instance, we had the first call for an aquatic reflectance fragment frame lift specifications last week, and we tried to reach as many people as possible, experts. So yeah, that's how we are trying to put people together to talk and to decide what the specification should be.
I guess now that we have this list of people that are clearly interested in the concept, maybe we could start sending information notes out to the emails we've collected.
Yeah, that's a very good idea, Matt. Thank you.
Great. Okay, a question here from Ed Armstrong, and he asks, for the ARD prototypes, are you focusing on a particular processing level? I'm not sure who to direct that to. Any of the leads?
Matt, I can have a shot at that. I think ARD is essentially, I think, a level 2 type product. Actually, perhaps Steve should answer that because he's most closely associated with production.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. That's exactly what I would suggest as well. Our specifications up to this point have been pretty consistent with the level 2 definitions, and that's why you'll see so far the self-assessments that come in against those product family specifications from the USGS are our level 2 surface reflectance and surface temperature products, as well as the ESA level 2A surface reflectance product. Yeah, that's it, Matt.
Thanks, Steve. Adam. Next is from Joan Massot. Can we get access to the CEOS interoperability terminology draft report? We are working on a report on the ARD concept, and it could be a good use, good to use the same definitions in that report. Steve, I know you've been working this with the working group on information systems in the CEOS.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Exactly. Within the land surface imaging virtual constellation, we did prepare an initial draft of definitions, and we are now working across broader CEOS agency groups through what Matt just described, a group we call WIGIS. That group is forming the final terminology paper. It's in draft. It's my understanding that group is doing an internal peer review right now, or soon will be. The target would be for us to have something available and endorsed later this year in the September-October timeframe.
Okay. Again, I think we can take an action to get that out to everybody once it's endorsed.
You bet. Yep.
Okay, Nikolina Milevas from the University of Augsburg. Is there more precise information when the ALOS2 Pulsar 2 data will become freely available? I'm not sure if anybody on the call can answer that one.
Well, Matt, if I may, the card4L doesn't necessarily mean that the data will be free. It's not our decision. It's not CEO's decision. It's the provider's decision. So while you can have ALOS2 Pulsar 2 as a card4L format, it's not necessarily will be free. This is really a decision of JAXA. While we have Landsat, Sentinel-2, where the governments or the agencies decided to have it free.
Absolutely. I think we have some colleagues from JAXA in the Slido, so they might be able to put an answer in there about the data availability side of things, possibly. Next question, Alba Sanchez. Is ARD intended to become a data format such as NetCDF? Are W3C or OGC involved in ARD specifications? Zolti, I might pass that one to you again. I know you've been involved on that side.
So while we are not really looking at a specific data format, actually, so the question is really good in terms of you are asking about data format, but also if we are going through some sort of standardization procedure. So we will not necessarily say that a card4L has to be some sort of data format. Generally, most agencies in the optical sector, at least, they are providing the data as GeoTIFF now, but we are fully open of other data formats. And browsing through the questions, I see someone was asking about stack or cloud optimized GeoTIFF. These are all fitting within the card4L framework. Now, regarding if we are working with some organizations, actually we do. We looked into a standardization procedure as well, and as of now, we are working with, in fact, OGC in their ongoing testbed 16 ARD work, where at least at LSIBC's aim to kind of create a community standard, if you will, which we can call card4L. Thanks.
Could I just add a little to that, Zolti? Going back to the data format question, we made a conscious decision to not look to standardize on a particular data format when we initiated this work. We're now at the point where we might start to include under the framework some guidance on different data formats where the community is evolving a preference for a particular data format. And we are seeing stack and COGAS formats that are being favored in the optical area.
Thank you. So the next question, Jean Beaufort, can you please provide information on the peer review process for software providers that are aiming to develop software that generates card4L? So is there any guidance available in that regard?
I can answer that Matt, I can try. We still don't have a guideline for the industry, for like software providers. But that's one of the main reasons that we are engaging with industry, and it's part of our roadmap, is to identify how we are going to proceed with the peer review for, in particular, for the commercial side.
Matt, this is Steve. I may
Sure.
just add as well that it's our intention to provide sample data sets on our CEOS ARD website, so other data providers can use those as guides and templates. If you look at the product family specifications that are currently on our website, you'll notice that the specification itself has the columns in it to do the self-assessment process. So we're trying to facilitate an easy and well understood process as much as we can, and that's all coming.
Just perhaps one further observation on that question. In terms of exactly how the data are produced, I mean, the specifications we talk about what the product should look like, not so much how it's produced. So it's about the quality of the data and having a geophysical measurement. And sometimes that goes to a particular correct approach, but not in general.
Okay. Any other inputs? Okay, next question is from Ian Jarvis, and he asks, what user needs are being used to drive Sentinel-1 SAR ARD requirements?
I can have a first shot at this, Matt. Andrea might want to follow on. What's happening with the SAR is that the community itself, the radar community, and it's okay, who's listening but not on the call, is the leader on this, is actually itself working out how it could produce products, interferometric products, backscatter products, according to a specification that would allow them to be produced systematically and en masse in future. So it's the radar community itself which is actually driving the specification. And so in fact they are representing, if you like, their users in terms of what the ARD products could be, and technically whether they're feasible and how they could be produced.
Thanks, Adam. Question from Sudhir asks, EO ARD can be large and sometimes not easy to download. Is there any plan in place to serve those ARD as web services that can be consumed without download?
I can try to answer that, Matt. So yeah, as we mentioned, trial data sets will be sourced through the ARD website. But yeah, it's a very relevant question how to actually get a big load of data. Even just one Sentinel-2 scene, it hits you back with a large amount of data in terms of downloading. So our aim is to work with the providers as well. So once data will become Card4L and is coming already from the data producers, the data providers will be providing that data in a Card4L format. So if you go to, I don't want to commercialize the place, but you go to the big commercial distributors, eventually you will be getting through your cloud access Card4L data. As we can see, the Lancet collection 2 and the upcoming reprocessing of Sentinel-2 will actually start to provide data in Card4L. So once you find it on any of the cloud services, that's what you will get. Anyone else?
Well, sounds like you covered it. Thanks, Salty. A question from Francis Lindsay of NASA about whether the slides from today will be available, and I'll say yes, we can get those around to everybody. Next is Feng Yin. Is there a quality assurance of the peer review, or is it better to have operational validation schemes to continuously validate and improve the ARD dataset? So our peer review expert, Medharvi Bankapam from Geoscience Australia, we don't have him on the line, but maybe Andrea, do you?
Sorry. I'll comment on this, Matt, if you like. There's ongoing work to, sorry, I lost the question now.
It's okay. Is there a quality assurance of the peer review process? Or is it?
So we have a peer review process in terms of assessing whether the data fit the specifications, and we're increasingly seeing effort going into, and certainly Digital Earth Africa, and I know the Australian teams are looking at independent measurements and field tests to test the quality of the data, the absolute quality, and to provide that as feedback to the providers, so that not just whether they meet the specification, but the inherent quality of the data continues to improve. That's a work in progress, and and I'd hope that other people in the community will engage with that as well.
Yeah, I just want to complement that the peer review process is related to the version of the document. So if improvements happen in the future, so it means that the data set, it's going to be always linked to that version. So the improvements may be, they have to be transferred to the data sets, if you know what I mean. There will be always a link between the version of the document and the data set.
Could I also, at this point, Matt, just flick back to Francis Lindsay's question from NASA, which goes not to just about the data sets, but also about, let's show how improvements to interoperability are achieved through ARD. I'll make a first comment is that if you look at how those interoperability works are progressing in cases like the harmonizing Landsat and Sentinel with which NASA has been leading, then the steps that are taken in that, which involve things like corrections and bring the data together, are similar to the steps that are taken in the ARD framework. So there's a series of corrections which are needed before you can do that merging and integration and ultimately blending of products. So we have that example. There are multiple examples in places like Australia where they've been doing these levels of corrections themselves, and they relate to things like normalized wetness indexes, which you can use to extract coastlines, don't work unless you do all these corrections. Now, what we need to do is continue to build the examples that make a difference, of where this makes a difference. And we're really interested to hear from the community at large about the benefits and impacts of using the ARD process data, so that we can continue to, so that we can present the value of the work.
Can I add just one sentence here, Adam? So how we see this within LSI, we see it's Card4L is basically the initiator towards a fully harmonized, or actually at the end a fused data set. So we have actually this internal scale what we use, that after Card4L we have something called interoperable data, then we have harmonized data sets, and eventually we have fusions, where at the really last stage you don't actually really know what sensor you are working with. I mean, you can know it if you want, but it's not very relevant because the sensors are fully fused. So ESA has a prototype project working with the Landsat 8 and Sentinel-2 A and B data, where they fully harmonize the data sets.
Okay. Jonas Obrell from the German Aerospace Center asks, will there be guidelines available with information how to produce ARD formats, for example, the radar backscatter, with different kinds of software?
I could answer if it's okay. So actually, and this is why we have, among other things, this webinar to reach out not only to the big data providers, and this is relevant for the next question from Fabian as well, where he's asking who is producing these data sets. So it's not that we only work with the largest data producers. So we are looking out to work with smaller data providers, and also software developers. So I can mention that we already work with the PCI Geomatica from Canada. They were interested to tune up their software to be able to provide a card for our data. So I'm not sure where they are at this point, but I know that they are working on that. And coming back to the data distribution itself, again, our aim is that not only ESA or USGS or JAXA will provide card for our data, but also the business community and the smaller providers who will be able to pick up the card for an idea and provide their data actually in a card for a format.
And Zolti, maybe I'll add a couple comments too, that it is a requirement for card4L compliance that the algorithm description documentation is all provided publicly and on a website available to anybody. So we will be working as these data sets are published and become registered as card4L compliant. We'll be ensuring that all that information, and I know, for instance, the USGS does also provide its software source code for producing level 2 products to the public as well, for going from level 1 to level 2 to do that processing. So that is part of the requirements of the product family specifications themselves.
So Andrea, we have two questions here about the self-assessment process and how one would undertake that for a product. Can you give us a high-level overview of what doing a self-assessment means?
Well, self-assessment is when the data providers or the agencies, they have a product and they want to see if their product is at the CEOS ARD level. So the first step is to contact the LSI-DC secretariat and get further information. But we have at the CEOS ARD webpage, we have the product family specifications, and all the parameters are in there, all the requirements. So that's the broad overview of the self-assessment. And the peer review is, I don't know if there is a question on that, but the peer review is when an independent group peer review the level of the self-assessment, because the PFS has two levels: the threshold level, that's the minimum requirement to be a CEOS ARD, and the target level, when it involves a more elaborated, like additional requirements. So this peer review at the moment is the working group CalVal, who is doing the peer review for USGS and the European Space Agency for their optical products. And we still have to define how we are going to proceed with the industry, the commercial products. we still don't have a process, a peer review process for the commercial side. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Sanji asks, how does CEOS ARD address interoperability and the use of multi-sensor data? So for instance, using Sentinel-2 and Landsat 8 without calibration. Steve, I know you've been doing interoperability work with colleagues in ESA. Any response on that one?
Yeah, I was, Matt, can you point me at that question again? That one slipped off my screen as well.
Sure.
Can you repeat that?
Yep. So Sanji asks, in the context of CEOS ARD, will this also aim to enable the direct analysis using multi-sensor data, for instance, Sentinel-2 and Landsat 8 without calibration?
Yeah, I would say the aim is to promote and establish that initial stage of interoperability, and Zolti kind of addressed that earlier in how we view it being a continuum. Now, to get to a beginning state of CARD4L, there is requirements that go into creating a level 2 product. So assuming you've reached that level of quality and consistency in your product, then it would fully enable further interoperability with other adjustments that might be needed, like spectral bandpass adjustments and those kind of things and corrections that Adam mentioned earlier.
Thanks.
So in terms of that interoperability, I think that the parallel I draw is that if the ARD from Sentinel-2 and from Landsat 8 is both producing a measurement of surface reflectance, then they're inherently more comparable than if you weren't doing that. But they're different instruments. So just as if you measure temperature with a different instrument, you might get a different reading due to time fluctuations or some such. You'd expect them to be different and need further work, but starting from a good place. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks. Tushar Shukla asks, what is the current plan for progression towards the stack format?
Let me just respond to that one, Matt, perhaps. We're not actively promoting that stack format. What we're doing is simply noting that the community is progressing for stack and associated formats like COG. And if the community starts to use those more broadly, we might include some guidance on how the data could be produced to support those.
Okay, next question. Roberto asks, as DIAS are data providers for CAP monitoring, we found out each PA has its own ARD format and processing preference. Can CEOS PFS be considered a proposal for a standard?
This goes to a couple of questions along the same line. We have considered whether or not we should look at this as a standard. At the moment, we're in the position of thinking that if we can bring on a broader community, then it might be something that's a community-owned standard before we were to look at taking the deep dive of going to a formal standard. As Zolti mentioned earlier, we're working with the OGC on this, and we're just going to see where that takes us. I hope that answered the question.
Thanks, Adam. So we have two questions here about how does a an organization become a distributor of Card4L data?
Can I answer here?
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, it's very simple. It depends what kind of organization you are. If you are a data producer, you will just start to follow the PFSs and process your data into Card4L. So that's one thing. If you are a data provider, you just pay attention when you harvest your data and make sure that your data producer will provide their data in Card4L. Now, the other option is, of course, that if the data provider will not provide it in Card4L, the data producer will not provide it, but the data provider can reprocess that data, of course, given that you have whatever you need for that, and provide your data eventually in Card4L. That's the simple answer. I don't know if the other colleagues have anything to add here.
I think there's different models about how people can get involved, Salty. So we will see some, the agencies produce Card4L data, which means that anybody can potentially host it. There are some groups who will produce their own ARD, hopefully to the specification, and some private companies that will produce data to the specification. So it's an ecosystem that's evolving. I'm not sure that we can be more specific about than that.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Andrea Berardi from the Italian Space Agency. Why does Card4L require atmospheric correction exclusively? Ignoring adjacency effect correction, topographic effect correction, and BRDF corrections.
Could I pick that one up then?
Mm-hmm.
I think the objective of the Card4L that you're talking about is to get to a measurement of surface reflectance. At the moment, the community is agreed that atmospheric correction is part of that and is converging on methods to do that. Whereas topographic correction and BRDF are more contentious and haven't yet gained universal support for them being required, and partly that's tied in with clarity on the methods to do them. So what we'll see over time is, as Andrea mentioned, there's two levels in the Card4L. One is a least requirements, the least needs to be done, and the other is a target, which is pushing to be better. And we'll see the quality improve as there becomes a convergence agreement on the necessary corrections and how they can be made. So there are people whose view is very strongly that BRDF correction is required. There are others who are less convinced. If you have a very narrow field of view sensor, then it may not be required in any case. So it's a progression, and we'll see the specifications will raise a higher bar as the community identifies that a higher bar is needed.
Adam, I might just add as well, in the latest version of the surface reflectance, surface temperature product family specifications, version 5.0, which has just been published in the last few weeks, BRDF correction, terrain illumination have been added as separate target level requirements. So that is part of the specifications going forward.
Okay, so it's really great to see we've got heaps of questions. So we'll be able to take 2 more on the stream, and we will endeavour to answer the rest via email, and we'll send those out to the full list of registrations that we had for the webinar. So two more. One here from Gary Holmes. What's the likely timescale for the systematic availability of ARD for Landsat 8, 9, and Sentinel-2? Steve?
Yep, I can I can for sure answer Landsat 8 and 9. Let perhaps Andrea or Zolti do the Sentinel-2 one. The Landsat 8 product being Card4L compliant is going through its final testing phases right now. We are moving to a cloud-enabled environment, and we see that in the next just few months here. So we've communicated a mid-2020 date on our website, and it'll be towards the end of that that time window. Landsat 9, of course, is yet to be launched. That'll be launched next year, and those products will be generated out of the gate being Card4L compliant. So that'll be next year. I'll let Zolti or Andrea maybe address Sentinel-2.
Yeah, I can say a few words about Sentinel-2, although I'm not ESA. They are working heavily, just like USGS actually, to reach a Card4L compliance with Sentinel-2 as of now. I can't really say if Andrea is back. Maybe she can say a date if what she heard. And we also work with Sentinel-1 towards a radar backscatter Card4L. Just to add here one more thing, I think there was one other question asking about when a new GRI or the new DEM will be involved when we are generating a Sentinel-2 Card4L. So actually, by the time I foreseen that by the time when the 30-meter Copernicus DEM will be incorporated into the Sentinel-2 workflow, ESA will be generating, just as Steve said out of the gate, Card4L compliant products. I'm not sure if Andrea is back and she has anything to add here.
Zolti, Adam here. I'd like to just add in an observation that for Africa, Digital Earth Africa is actually developing and funding pipelines of analysis-ready data from Sentinel-2 using the Sen2 core methodology, but also, and this was alluded to earlier, prototyping Sentinel-1 normalized radar backscatter product. And the reason we're doing that is to try to both demonstrate the need, we can see the need, and to identify what it will look like as ESA hopefully steps in to pick up those supply chains.
And Zolti, maybe perhaps to pick up off your GRI comment, with Landsat Collection 2, we've been working closely with ESA and have reprocessed and used updated ground control to take advantage of GRI. So with Collection 2, and once ESA processes using GRI, we expect those two products will align within the order of 5 to 7 meters. We've done a lot of analysis on that, working with ESA.
I think this also leads to David Small's question about, will ARD products be reprocessed with sequential collections as improved reference data sets and ancillary data sets come in? And I think this is ultimately a question for the agencies providing the data, but increasingly it leads the work towards a collections-based approach.
Yeah, and to touch on that even further, maybe Adam, we are also working with ESA on Copernicus DEM. Again, that's not in Collection 2. We are progressing forward on that without that, but perhaps Collection 3 will have a common DEM.
Okay. So one final question, and I think I can answer this one. It's from Sergio Folco, and he asks, do we have a final version of the product family specifications at this point? And the answer is that we update them annually, and it's a continual process. We expect them to be ever evolving. And the latest were just endorsed by CEOS, and they're on our website at ceos.org/ARD. Currently version 5 of all of them, and you can get them there. So with that, we do have many more questions. As I said, we'll get answers to all of them and send them back to you via email. Otherwise, I think we will wrap up the stream. I want to thank everybody for joining. And, so I think it was really good.
Quick open mic.
Sure.
Thanks everybody for joining. It's really been great to have this level of interest. It gives us a sense that the work we're doing really is relevant and important, and that we can look forward to future webinars. We'll use some of the questions from this to help to shape what the next one will be on.
Just a quick thank you from everyone. It really was a great interest, which we are very pleased with, and we will continue working very hard to hopefully please you guys. Thank you again.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So the stream archive will be at this link. Feel free to rewatch it if you like, and we'll be in touch.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.